Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Middle Ground podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about myths. We're going to be myth busting a little bit, right? And I've learned something from the last episode because when I went to edit it, I realized I had the mic facing the wrong way. This mic only takes audio in from the front, or I've set it up so it only takes audio in from the front, and I had it sideways. So I had to do the best I could in post-production and kind of saved it, but noted and will not happen again. So we are going to be diving into 5 different myths that I think are still quite prevalent in the fitness industry. It's definitely gotten better over the past few years. There's been a kind of rise of no bullshit fitness content and information. But there's still some stuff that the general public doesn't know. I often forget what the general public doesn't know because I'm surrounded by coaches. I'm surrounded by people that I coach, people that have been taught what is a myth and what isn't, and how to kind of decipher what is and isn't true. That door's about to slam. What is and what isn't true, okay? So I often forget what the general public don't know and how uninformed they might be around certain things. So I'm going to break down 5 of the top ones. If you have any, please message me, leave a comment. I will probably do another episode of this, maybe with a friend, maybe with another coach, because I think it's super important to get that information out there and kind of decipher all of the myths that people face on a regular basis and that end up guiding their fitness journey when really they shouldn't be listening to them at all. I'm also going to drink some coffee, so I will mute myself when I drink coffee. Okay, let's dive into myth number 1, which is the fact that eating late at night makes you gain fat. Now, again, to the untrained ear, there's a middle ground, there's a bell curve here, where if you're quite uneducated and don't care at all, you'll think, why is that possible? And then you start to dip your toe into the health and fitness world, and that's when you get force-fed these myths, because they're easy to sell people on the basis of. And then you get to the other end of the bell curve, where you're educated and you understand that these things are all, again, bullshit. So, the thing that people tend to believe, the thing that people tend to spout is that you store more fat late at night. There's the old no carbs after dark craze, which I find absolutely fucking hilarious. So, the belief is that you eat carbs or food late at night, it gets stored as fat because, potentially your body isn't primed for digestion or primed for utilizing food, maybe because you're not going to go and do any exercise, so it's just going to get stored, right? The reality, not a thing at all, in the slightest. If you eat before bed, you might mess up your sleep a little bit because you'll be digesting rather than, being in full deep sleep. The knock-on effect of this might be that your hunger hormones are a little bit out of whack the next day. So, for example, ghrelin, the hormone that makes you hungry, and leptin, the hormone that makes you full, can go a bit haywire. So you might have more ghrelin, less leptin, so you're more hungry, less full with the regular food that you will eat. So you might end up eating more the next day. So this myth isn't unfounded, and it's not completely come out of the blue, but it's not a causation thing. It's more of a correlation thing. Another part of it, is that when you are eating late at night, what kind of foods are you eating? Most people aren't waking up or just before they're going to bed at 12, or they come downstairs in the middle of the night. They're not having a home-cooked, whole food, high-protein meal. They're snacking. It's the hyper-palatable, high-calorie, low-nutrition foods that, again, 100% fine to eat in moderation. But if you're blindly snacking them in the middle of the night or late at night, yeah, they're probably not going to be too beneficial for your goals, for your fat loss goals, right? So, again, the myth isn't completely unfounded, but it's not the way that people make it sound. So if you're find that you're gaining weight because you're eating late at night, 2 things are either happening. Well, one thing, you're definitely not in a calorie deficit. If you're in a deficit and you just happen to eat late at night, more power to you. If that works, sweet. The only thing I'd be cautious of is messing with the quality of your sleep. Generally, you kind of want to finish your last meal 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed so that it's fully digested or mostly digested, and then you can sleep properly. However, not the end of the world. If you're in a deficit, you will lose fat. If you're in a deficit, you will lose fat regardless of the time that you eat. Meal timings don't mean anything. They're such a small fraction of a percent in the wider picture. So I wouldn't even bother thinking about them. Now, if you're find that you're gaining fat because you're eating late at night, it's because you're not in a deficit. And two things are either happening. One, you're either eating, like I said, high calorie, hyper palatable foods late at night, or you're digesting food while you sleep, so your sleep's not as good, so it's messing with your hunger hormones, so you feel more hungry, less full, and that's having an impact in the amount of food and the types of food that you eat throughout the day, the next day, and then that cycle might repeat, so that you're constantly getting quite low quality sleep, constantly haven't got the right hunger and satiety signaling happening in your body, so it's going to be more difficult, right? It's the first coffee of the day as well, so I'm probably going to get more energetic throughout this episode. So that's the first one. Eating late at night doesn't make you gain fat. Plain and simple. Second one. Training to failure every set. Now this has been a rise very recently. There's been a big rise in this, especially among young people. Mainly because of the Mike Mensa style of training. The, not old school, but the low volume, kind of high intensity craze in terms of training. So you do very few sets and you take them all to absolute failure. And that's kind of how you train. You might do 1 or 2 sets per exercise and you're going to take both of them to complete failure. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that. I've done it before. Did I notice the crazy strength gains that people talk about or crazy muscle gains? No, not at all. Didn't really notice any changes. What I did notice that I was more likely to get injured, which is the main concern here. And again, most of these myths have some sort of backing because they have to be relevant. They can't just be pulled out of the blue because no one would care about them. They have to have something compelling about them. Some people have to have experienced the end result for someone to make up a reason why that happened, which is where the myth comes in. Now, when it comes to training, everyone will recommend different things. There's obviously science behind different things. The most important part of your training is the intensity that you train at, in my opinion. You could do 100 sets, but if you do those 100 sets, 10 reps away from failure, you're not going to be making much progress at all. Whereas if you did 2 sets and you took them both to complete failure, you're going to see a higher increase in hypertrophy, so muscle building outcomes, and probably strength outcomes as well. Now, I'm not talking about the top 1% of people. I don't work with people like that. I work with general population. I work with mums. I work with dads. I work with students. I work with people that just want to get a little bit fitter, right? And want to take control of their body, want to have autonomy, get their body to where they want it to be able to perform the way they want to perform, and live a life outside of the gym. That is what I do. So when I program for people, I think a better way to think about training is you use failure as a tool. You use failure as a tool to know how hard to push. For example, all my clients will have rep ranges and tempos and all of this kind of stuff when it comes to training. I won't dive into that too much. I might do a different episode on training if it's in demand. And they know that if they've got 3 sets, their first 2 sets should probably be anywhere from, 1 to 2 to maybe 3 reps away from failure. So gun to your head, you could do 3 more reps or 2 more reps or 1 more rep. That last set, I find a useful tool to go way closer to failure. So whether it is 1 rep away from failure or complete failure, it's good to know where failure is. People that have never been to true failure on an exercise don't know how hard to push. They don't know where the end of that rep range is to be able to push past it and then up the weight and then keep going. So failure is a really useful tool to kind of hone in on your training, to understand where your limits are and how to track your progression. If your point of failure goes from 7 reps to 10 reps, you've gotten stronger, you've built muscle. Whereas if you are only ever 3 reps away from failure, you've never pushed that limit, you don't really know how strong you are, you don't really know where you could be going, what you could be doing, and how hard you could be pushing. So again, I don't think going to failure every single set is a necessity. I think going to failure every now and then for an exercise. Complete failure is a useful tool. And I think you need to go close to failure for every single one of your sets to see the maximum benefit, right? You need to provide that stimulus for your body to react to. I won't go too deep on that though. But you don't need to train to failure every single set. Train close to failure, 1 to 2 reps away from failure for most of your sets. You will see numerous improvements in your progress if you haven't been training very close to failure for this entire time. And failure is gun to your head as well. Gun to your head, you could do 1 more rep. Your family's lives are on the line, you could do 1 more rep. That's what I mean when I say failure. I don't mean I'm getting a little bit bored now, I'm going to put the weight down. I see a lot of people in the gym that don't train anywhere near hard enough. They kind of pump out 10 reps. I used to do this when I first got into the gym. You have that 3 sets, 10 reps in your head. That's what you do. So you go on and you pump out 10 reps and you're like, cool. You don't push them very hard. You don't reach a point of technical failure. You don't reach a point of muscular failure. You just kind of 10 reps. Cool, put it back down. Wait a couple minutes, minute. Do another set, right? And that's not getting you anywhere. So train harder. Long story short. Big one here. Strength training makes you bulky. Now, I cannot stress this enough. Most people that you think are too bulky are either on performance enhancing drugs, which I don't believe you plan to take. So that's not a risk you run into. Or have tried for over a decade to look too bulky. Have tried probably at least 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 times a week for the last decade minimum to look too bulky. Do you understand how fucking hard it is to build muscle? Especially as a woman. Especially as a woman. You run 0 risk of becoming too bulky. And if you get to a point where you think, I look too bulky, you can stop training. You can lose muscle. It is not a risk anyone has to worry about. You have complete control over your body and you can go, my arms are too big. I'm going to stop training my arms till they get to a point where I'm happy with them. Sick. My legs look too big. I'm going to stop training them. It's not fucking rocket science. For me, the makes you look bulky thing is an excuse for people to not train. It's mainly my generation have largely overcome that. You see a lot of muscle mummies out there. You see a lot of strong gals. They've kind of overcome the fact that they've realized that muscles are cool. Muscles are healthy. Muscles are brilliant for your longevity. They're brilliant for your quality of life. They're brilliant for your overall health. And they look fucking sick. They look sick. Most women that have a dream physique, I don't necessarily agree with having like a dream physique for like a photo of someone else, right? That's your dream physique. You're never going to achieve it. But most people that have a dream physique and look at a picture of someone and go, oh, I really want to look like that. They probably need more muscle to achieve it. Girls specifically, guys don't really have this, don't run into this too much. So I'm kind of pointing this more at women. Women that look at a photo of a girl and go, she's got a brilliant ass. I'd love to have an ass like that. Do some hip thrusts. You can build an ass. You can build legs. You can build shoulders. You can build like that Wonder Woman physique, whatever it may be, whatever you aspire to, is achieved through you probably having more muscle mass than you currently do. So go and train. I think people use it as an excuse to not have to train, to not have to learn to train. Specifically, the older generation, the people that are now 40, 50, 60. Training wasn't as in the cultural norm as it is now. I think training has had a massive rise recently, especially with women, which is amazing. But it's much more in the culture of people that are teenagers, 20-somethings and early 30s. Training is a norm. Going to the gym isn't something that the weird like big guys do. It's something that you just go and do. It's a part of life. It's a part of your overall health. So I don't think it's a problem you run into with that group of people as much. But the older generations massively have this issue where strength training makes you bulky. It's like, no, strength training will be the thing that allows you to play with your kids when you're older. Strength training will be the thing that keeps you out of the fucking hospital when you fall over when you're 60 or 70. Strength training will be the thing that keeps your quality of life high so that you enjoy the last 10 years of your life rather than spend it bedbound. So it doesn't make you look bulky. And if you get to a point where you think, I look too bulky, you can stop training. It makes people look better. Strength training makes people look better. Obviously, there's different preferences for different people. I'm not going to sit here and say that some people don't prefer people that are a little bit slimmer, people that are a little bit bigger. Completely depends. However, in my humble opinion, people look better with a physique, with a structure, men and women. You want that strong physique. You want to be fucking capable, man. I'm going to stop ranting, but strength training doesn't make you look bulky unless you want it to. And if you don't want it to, then you can get to a point where you're happy and stop training. But you will probably start training and go, I actually love this. I love how it makes me feel. I love how it makes me look. And you keep doing it. Number 4, the fat burning zone and high intensity interval training. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. So, the fat burning zone is not a myth. However, it is largely misunderstood by most people, especially people that sell things off the back of it. So, the fat burning zone is where your body will choose to burn fat as a fuel source over carbohydrates and glucose as a fuel source. Mainly because your intensity of exercise is quite low. So your heart rate is quite low. So you're not pulling off glucose stores. It can take the time to break down fats and use them as energy. So this will be things like walking. And that's why people say walking, like, it's really complicated. There's two things here where people will claim that high intensity interval training will burn loads of fat, right? Because it gets you in the fat burning zone. One, that's completely wrong. You're not burning fat. You're burning a lot of carbohydrates while you're doing it. You're using glucose as your primary fuel source. And then there's people that will say walking is better than running for fat loss because you're in a fat burning zone, or that incline walking on a treadmill is better than running because you're in a fat burning zone. Let me break down these two things. The fat burning zone does not mean you are losing body fat to fuel yourself. If you are not in a deficit, you will not lose fat no matter how much fat you burn in a fat burning zone, because it is replaced by the excess calories that you then eat. Does that make sense? If you are in a deficit, again, doesn't matter how much fat you burn in the fat burning zone. Your body will compensate. Your body's very smart. If you burn more fat earlier in the day, it will burn more carbs later in the day, and vice versa. If you burn a lot of carbs earlier in the day through, high intensity exercise, you might burn more fats later in the day. Your body is very smart. It levels these things out. And if you are not in a deficit, then no amount of fat burning exercise will help you lose fat, because you're not in a deficit. You don't have that energy deficit where your body will start to pull energy from your fat stores. It will just get replaced because you're not in a deficit. I hope that makes sense. Now, we've got HIIT, where people will say this helps you burn more fat, mainly because of the afterburn effect. The afterburn effect is where your body continues to burn a bit more energy than normal after something like a high intensity interval session, or just something that gets your heart rate quite high. The afterburn effect is one of the most overdone things in fitness. It's one of those things where people find one study and then they just pull it from it and claim that this is the rule for everything and that it's be all end all. The afterburn effect probably accounts for maybe an extra, I want to say 50 calories in a day. It's really not a lot. It's not a lot for people to claim that. It's like the cold water thing. People say that you jump in cold water immersion, and you're gonna, you burn way more fat. You don't. It's maybe an extra 50 calories, and it's accompanied by an increase in appetite, which in studies has been shown to could be completely counteracted because you get an increased appetite. Participants that are allowed to eat as much food as possible will eat more food than the group that didn't have cold water. It's very interesting, but the excess calorie burn is negated in cold water immersion. Anyway, not what I'm talking about. Afterburn effect's bullshit. You might burn a little bit more energy after something high intensity, but not enough to contribute to fat loss at all. And HIIT doesn't put you in the fat burning zone. You're burning carbohydrates, you're burning glucose. A lot of the time, it might be high enough intensity that you're building up lactic acid. You're not getting enough oxygen in to flush it out. So it's just a stupid myth, really. Again, a lot of these are stupid myths. Some of them are a little bit deeper than others. This is a quick one. Fat burning zone doesn't mean you're losing body fat, because unless you're in a deficit, it will just be replaced. And HIIT in the afterburn effect doesn't really make much of a difference. One, you're not in the fat burning zone in HIIT. You're not burning any more fat. It's that fat burning workout doesn't exist. And the afterburn effect accounts for very little. Final one, and then we will go. The spot reduction of fat. Now, if you haven't heard this term before, it is essentially when people believe that if they do exercises targeting certain areas, they will lose fat in those certain areas. For example, if I thought, my abs are a little bit fat, I want to see my abs, and I did a bunch of crunches, I think it's going to help reduce the fat in that area because I'm working that area. Not how it works. And this was me as well. This was definitely me as a 14-year-old doing sit-ups and Russian twists on my bedroom floor, giving myself the most immense carpet burn on my lower back. Didn't work at all. I did 30-day ab challenge so much, and I don't really ever think I saw any difference. Did get a strong core though. If you were to have, legs that you thought could do with a little bit less fat, and you start doing loads of squats to lose fat in your legs, it's not how the body works. If you think about your general body fat as a pool of water, when you lose fat, you just pull a cup out of it. The fat comes from everywhere. The fat generally reduces. Now, where it gets a little bit tricky is genetic storage of fat. Some people will store more fat in different places than others. It's why some people have abs at much higher body fat percentages, because they just don't store much fat there. I store most of my fat in my lower stomach and ass. Basically, lower stomach, lower back, and ass. That's why my limbs are quite lean. I've got quite lean legs. I've got quite lean arms, because my body just doesn't store fat there. It's similar for men. Men and women tend to have different places where they store fat for evolutionary reasons. But then within men and women, there's also differences. So some women are really fucking lean. They have crazy abs. And all that fat is just stored in their ass and legs. It's just genetic. And your body will pull fat from wherever it pulls it from first. There's nothing you can do here to change that. For example, when I start losing fat, it generally comes from my midsection first. For some reason. I don't know. And then I'm just caked up, mate. It will just stay in my ass forever. I've probably got about 30 kilos of fat in my ass. And this is why some people, there's that stubborn fat, right? That stubborn fat, you've been losing fat for so long, it won't go. That's just where your body will pull it from last. That's just a genetic thing. You can't decide that. You can't really change it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You can't spot reduce fat. However, what you can do is build muscle in that area so that it looks better at higher body fat percentages. You're spreading the fat out, essentially. So if I had a genetic, let's use abs. Abs is a really easy one. If I train my abs like any other muscle, high intensity. By high intensity, I don't mean HIIT training. I mean pushing them to failure. Weighted progressive overload, a cable crunch, a weighted leg raise, this kind of thing. I will build my abs. I will build the muscle there like any other muscle, meaning they will probably show at higher body fat percentages because they are bigger. If you build your biceps, they will probably show at higher body fat percentages because they are bigger. They occupy more space. It's going to be harder not to see them. So you can't spot reduce fat. Your body will take fat from wherever it takes it from. However, you can build muscle in the areas that you would like to define so that the muscles show at higher body fat percentages. That is a very important note because it can change how you look. You can't spot reduce fat, but you can kind of give the appearance of it by creating bigger muscles. Again, building fat is a much harder, much longer process than losing fat. So it's not as quick as if you were to be able to spot reduce fat. You can't. But throughout the course of 2-3 years, you're going to look better at high body fat percentages. I noticed this massively over the last 2-3 years, from a point of not having enough muscle and not really looking too good at, let's say, like 95 kilos. Now at 95 kilo, I look, in my opinion, much better. I've got more muscle occupying the space, so it looks like I have less body fat, which I don't really. I look better at 100 kilos now than I did at 95 kilos 2-3 years ago, if that makes sense. So you can't spot reduce fat. You can increase the muscle size and give the appearance of it. And that is our 5 myths. So we've covered eating late at night does not make you gain fat. There are mechanisms that won't help fat loss, but it's not the eating late at night. It's more so what you do when you eat late at night and the things you eat when you eat late at night, not the action itself. Training to failure every single set is not the best idea. It increases your injury risk. It's hard mentally, and recovery. I forgot to cover this. Stimulus to fatigue ratio is kind of a bit mismatched. By that I mean you will be more fatigued than the increase in stimulus that you get. So if you were to go 1 rep from failure, the fatigue is much less and the stimulus is not that much less. So you go an extra rep to failure and that fatigue shoots up, but the stimulus necessarily doesn't. So you're probably better off going 1 rep from failure. It means you can train harder more often. Strength training makes you bulky. We know this. It doesn't. Most of the dream physiques out there come from having a little bit more muscle than you currently do and probably a little bit less fat than you currently do, depending on your starting position, obviously. The fat burning zone doesn't mean you'll burn more fat at all. It will just be replaced unless you are in a deficit. And the afterburn effect doesn't account for anything really at all. So HIIT workouts, if you enjoy them, sick. If you don't, sick. It's not going to make a difference on your fat loss. And then finally, the spot reduction of fat. Can't spot reduce fat, but you can increase the muscle in the area to give it the appearance of less fat. So there we go. Those are our 5 myths. If you want to see me do another episode of this, let me know. I'm sure there's some myths out there that you lot still believe that I can cover. Like. Can you like? I suppose on YouTube you can like. Like it on YouTube. Leave a rating on Spotify. Subscribe. Follow the podcast on Spotify and YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at JudeVenCoaching. Thank you for watching episode 4 of The Middle Ground. We're coming up to episode 5. We're going to be at episode 10 before we know it. I hope you have a lovely week. Thank you for listening. We're out.